Swift wasn't entirely sure. A middle-aged male in a dirty white surgical coat had spotted the pair and was advancing on them through the rubble. Dressed in suits and fedora hats, they no doubt stuck out like sore thumbs among the shirt-sleeved workers trying to clear the rubble. The doctor had obviously realised these were the detectives he was expecting. "Dr. Stevenson?" asked Swift. The man nodded. "I'm Detective Chief Inspector Ambrose Swift, and this is Detective Sergeant James Weighton." The doctor gave Weighton a smaller nod. "We were told there's something amiss with one of the bodies." "That's right, Chief Inspector. Follow me, please, gentlemen." A makeshift tent had been set up to the side of where the workmen were digging through the rubble. "Are there still folks missing?" asked Weighton. "We don't think so," said the doctor. "They just want to make doubly sure." "How many dead?" asked Swift. "From last night's bombing raid, of course." "Well, it was a big one here, possibly the largest high-explosive bomb dropped on Hull so far. That's why there's such a mess." Swift stopped himself, sighing. Why couldn't people just answer the question that had been asked? "How many?" "Sorry. Altogether 10 dead. Another dozen seriously injured. That's across all last night's bomb sites. Here, the avenues, Sutton, and over by Alexandra Dock. The worst was here. The shelter took a near-direct hit. But in addition to those killed by the bombs, there's this other one." The doctor pulled back the flap of the tent. Various bodies, both large and pitifully small, were lined up neatly in a row, covered in sheets. In the early summer heat, they were indeed already starting to smell. "Shouldn't these all have been moved to the mortuary by now?" asked Swift. "Normally, yes, but these aren't normal times, Chief Inspector, as you can imagine." He led the two detectives to the end of the tent, where he pulled another flap aside. "The last in the line, so to speak. Now I hope neither of you is squeamish." Swift couldn't imagine Weighton was, given he was prone to smashing his fists into others' faces and bodies in the name of sport or fun, and he certainly hadn't seen any evidence of it in the time they'd been working as partners. As for Swift himself, well, he'd seen enough dismembered bodies in northeastern France to fill a lifetime's nightmares, including his own severed arm, which he still regularly dreamed he could use as he once had. The rounds of golf in his head, threading a drive through an avenue of Surrey pines down the centre of a lush fairway. They were things he could never do again. But he was still dexterous enough with one good hand and one good arm to drive a car, ride a horse. The doctor drew the cover sheet down to just below the victim's chin. She was young, early 20s, Swift guessed, and with pretty, small facial features. A snub nose, symmetrical face, and one which gave no inkling to the trauma her body had suffered. That only became clear when the doctor pulled the sheet further down her unclothed body. "Jesus!" exclaimed Weighton. Even Swift felt a sudden rush of bile into his gullet. He looked away briefly and swallowed. "Is that what I think it is?" he asked, looking back at the gaping wound in the young woman's chest. The doctor nodded. "Her heart has been literally ripped out. At first we thought it was a blast wound from the bomb, but it clearly isn't. It's too neat." Neat wasn't the adjective Swift would have chosen, but even from his non-expert experience of blast wounds in the Great War, he could tell the conclusion was correct. Weighton had leaned forwards, almost as though he wanted a better view. Swift couldn't imagine why. He was struggling to prevent the bile rising in his throat. "While she was still alive?" asked his sergeant. The question came out in a series of gasps, as though he couldn't quite believe what his brain was conjuring up. Swift, too, was imagining what that would have involved. The breaking or sawing of the breastbone at the very least. Surely, even at that stage, there would have been too much loss of blood. It wasn't even possible, was it? The doctor's answer, after he'd left a slight pause as though he was seriously considering the question, came almost as a relief. "The pathologist will tell you for certain, but for my pennyworth, it was done post-mortem." "A trophy of the killing?" postulated Swift. "Who knows?" shrugged the doctor.